questions at the end of the presentation. I would now like to begin with a prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Lord, bless our Palma and Notre Dame parents. May they know our gratitude for the great gift of being their son's counselor. May we work together as partners in good faith with steadfast hope. May our parents' sacrifices provide their sons the best education, physically, socially, intellectually, and spiritually, and be rewarded with your unconditional love, your promise of peace, and your eternal life. Amen. Blessed Edmund Rice, pray for us. Live Jesus in our hearts forever. Tonight's presenter, Maricela Gomez, has been involved in the higher education industry for over 15 years. She has read over 20,000 applications during her time as an admission counselor and enrollment manager at her alma mater, Santa Clara University. Her experience as a first-generation student and admission officer has enabled her to support families to understand the admission process with confidence and inspiration. Maricela is an expert in the college admission financial aid field. She has been invited to speak all over the Bay Area, other parts of California, and out of the country. She has been an invited guest at several Univision programs and radio stations and interviewed by local newspapers. It is my pleasure to introduce my friend and tonight's presenter, Maricela Gomez.
Thank you, thank you. I know we go way back, right? Way back when I was at Santa Clara. Well, thank you for having us tonight. Like every single year, I'm excited to share how financial aid works. But before we start, I invited someone from MPC. His name is Francisco Tostado, and he is extremely knowledgeable, even more so than me, I would say. He has been in the financial aid industry for over 12 years, and currently he's the director of financial aid at MPC. Francisco, do you want to say something before we start?
Just want to say thank you for inviting me, and I'm glad to be here to share the information that we have with our parents and our students.
Mm-hmm. So tonight, our goal is really to help you put the puzzle together. For my experience and the fact that I went through this process as a first-generation student, it felt that everything was everywhere. And that was before the internet. OMG, I just said that, and you could probably figure out my age. But it was before the internet, the flow of information. And so it was challenging to get information, right? However, now we're at the other end where we have way too many puzzle pieces to put together. We have different forms, we have different deadlines. Now we have early action, early decision. I'm not going to bombard you with admission terms, but the whole process has become very convoluted. And so Francisco and I are working together to bring you the best information, the most current information, and help you navigate this process. So at the end of this presentation, you have a clear idea of how financial aid works. And at the same time, you actually get to fill out one of the forms, which is called the FAFSA. And we'll talk about that more in a second. So part one is big picture. So oftentimes when families think about financial aid, they have some misconceptions that financial aid is either for students that have a very high need or for students that have some sort of talent and that they're going to receive a lot of aid. And at the same time, they believe that the cost of attendance is what's the real price or the real cost that a family will pay. So I want you to spend some time and really take notes of what is the cost of attendance. So the cost of attendance includes tuition, room and board, books, supplies, personal expenses, and a few other things. The reason I want you to take notes is because colleges, when they award when they send out their financial award letters, what ends up happening is that sometimes I want to be as PC as possible. Sometimes all the information is not there. So perhaps they will say cost of attendance will only cover tuition, and they may receive another award from another school where the cost of attendance is probably room and board and tuition. And as you move forward, do that research and find out what are all the fees and what is the total cost of attendance. Trust me, I've seen so many financial award letters and there's no consistency. So we want to empower you, and we want you to have kind of the most important information as you navigate the admission process. And so the cost of attendance, I mentioned what it was. Now, the EFC is what is called the expected family contribution. We will be talking about how you can get the EFC shortly. But what I want to get to is that the cost of attendance minus the EFC is going to let you know what is the true financial need. So for example, if the cost of attendance was, let's say, $1,000, can you imagine tuition being $1,000 to go to college? That would be amazing, right? And your EFC is $500. That's what the government said that you need to pay or contribute to your education. That's $500. So then you have $500 left, and that amount is covered by the university in the financial award letter. And we'll talk about where the funding comes from. So forms that you need to submit in order to be considered for financial aid. One is the FAFSA, so the free application for federal student aid. You have to also, well, actually, you don't have to fill out the Cal Grant verification form. Your counselors take care of everything, so you don't have to worry about that form. There's the DREAM Act. So if you're an AB 540, there's a process for that as well. You don't have to fill out the FAFSA. You could go directly to the DREAM Act. And all you need to do is to go to the California Student Aid Commission website and start the process there. Couple of things I want you to keep in mind is that all of this information or all of these forms, the way that it will work is that once you get admitted you get admitted to one of the schools, they will then provide or give a financial award letter. So some schools may say, you know what, we understand your financial situation by filling out the FAFSA. So great. And they'll say, well, we need a little bit more information. So we want you to fill out the CSS profile. And you know what? We're going to ask for more information. Either we're going to request your W2s, or we may ask for an additional form. And this is important because wherever you go, you're going to see FAFSA, you're going to listen to it wherever you go. But this requirement is often missed because there's no consistency on the type of school that requires it. However, it is a requirement for about 250 colleges. So keep in mind that as you are navigating this process, yes, find out the deadlines for FAFSA, but also find out if the school is requiring additional forms, like the CSS profile or the school-specific form. And those forms, what happens is that they will add another layer to really understand your need. And so I'll get into that in a second. So the FAFSA is managed by the US Department of Education. And so the way that this will work tonight is that you're going to fill out the FAFSA, and then you're going to list up to 10 colleges. And this is important because sometimes students are applying to more than 10, and I don't know why, but they apply to 10. I think I heard that a student this semester or this year, he's not one of my students, but this year he was entertaining the thought of 30 colleges. And I'm like, why? Why? You don't need 30 colleges. If it's difficult to decide which ones you want to apply now, by the time that you get admitted, it's even going to be more difficult to make that decision, right? And so anyways, that was a side story. Just keep in mind that if you do have more than 10 colleges, what will happen is that you will include the 10 colleges once you receive the student aid report. Then at that point you could, and which is a confirmation from the US Department of Education stating that they received your information. Once they receive that, you could go back to FAFSA and fill out or add more schools. So you'll remove those 10 colleges and then you will add the additional schools. Keep in mind that if you're applying to several CSUs or several UCs, you will need to send the FAFSA to each individual school, okay? Things that could be, that you may be considered for through the FAFSA are the Pell Grants, federal loans, and work study. Know that this process is very linear. The formula, it is what it is, and the number, you really can't change it. You really can't. The university will work with you if there are some special circumstances, but in reality, it's pretty consistent. It considers cash, savings, and checkings accounts, business investments, and farms, and a few other things that we'll go over tonight. The CSS profile, here we go. The CSS profile is managed through College Board. And this works the same way as FAFSA in regards to you fill out one application and then you request, in this case, College Board to send the information to the colleges that are requiring. By no means send this information to a school that is not requiring it. Why would you give them information or financial information if they are not looking at it? And so I really recommend that you, again, do your research. You want to make sure that you have the right data and that you're sending the forms on time. The CSS profile digs a little deeper. They consider factors such as home value, non-custodial parent income, and medical expenses as part of the equation. So know that this is a way for the school to determine the need, but if the EFC, let's say the EFC is pretty high, let's say it's close to tuition. Some schools, even though the EFC may be really high, they may turn around and offer financial aid. And usually you'll see this more on the private schools, from the private school perspective, from the private schools, and then also from, I would say, some public universities out of state, like Northern Arizona University is always recruiting our students. So there might be pieces of the application that the college considers and evaluates, and they will say, we know your need, but at the same time, we will award more financial aid because we want you to enroll at our campus. Process and timeline. This is, again, really very important. So if you are a senior now, the way that this works is that you will submit your financial forms, or the FAFSA and the CSS profile, during usually this fall, tonight, and you will fill out the forms and then it would be sent to the universities. When can you hear back? Time frame for early decision, which is the binding deadline, December through February. That's a typical time frame that I have noticed that colleges will turn around and offer financial aid. For regular decision, awards are usually sent out between March and April. And then rolling admission typically is right after the student has been admitted. Know that if it's the end of April, and if you have not received a financial award letter from a school, and let's say that you got admitted sometime in March, you need to contact the financial aid office ASAP, don't wait to say, oh, it's May 1st. I haven't heard back from the school. By that point, their monies are going to be gone. So just be alert that during these crucial months, you want to make sure that you get the forms in order for you to be fully aware of the cost of attendance. So meeting the need, I'm going to passing it over to you, Francisco.
Okay, so these are the things that can happen once we get the FAFSA. When you submit the FAFSA and you send it to the school of your choice, as Marisela mentioned, you can send up to 10 schools at a time. Before, we used to be able to see on the back end when we get the Institutional Student Information Report, or the ISAR, we used to be able to see what schools the students were applying to. So schools were notoriously known to inflate the award letters so that the students would come to that particular school. So the Department of Education decided that that was not fair for everybody, because not everybody had the same resources. So they've removed that. So now the only school that sees your ISAR is every school independently that you send it to. Okay. So three things happen when you get when the school receives the FAFSA. It could be, number one, it could be error-free. So pretty much you are straight going to be awarded or eligibility for grants and student loans. And some schools utilize it to make decisions on scholarships. That's going to be automatically going to happen. Step two, this one is very common, and I see that not only at the community college, but at the four-year schools when we're talking with our colleagues and we go to trainings. This is one of the common ones, that the FAFSA has been received, but there's errors. And the typical number one, it's always missing signatures, either the parent or the student, which essentially delays the process. Or number two, the parents did not utilize the data retrieval tool. What that means is that the parents can transfer the financial information from the IRS to the FAFSA application. And then that can be fixed two ways. Either the school asks for the students for the parents' documentation, or the student goes back into their FAFSA and makes the correction. Okay. And then three, the FAFSA is received with no errors, but they're selected for verification. So what that means is that the students have to use the data retrieval tool or submit paper copies of the tax returns, the federal tax returns, not the California, the federal tax returns, the 1040, okay, to the financial aid office. The federal government might want to verify that your son or your daughter has graduated from high school. So they want to see a copy of the high school diploma, this last one, 3C, it's a statement of educational purpose. That's typically when students jump from school to school. So we see that a lot in the community college, where the students goes to MPC one semester, the next semester they go to Harnell, the next semester they go to Cabrillo, the following semester they go to Gavilan, and then the following semester they go to CSUMB or San Jose State. So they're going around, they're jumping up and down from colleges. So then we need a statement of educational purpose. Okay. So that's typically the most common one, number 3C. Okay. Next one. Okay. The way we're going to meet the need is we're going to, this is typical steps both at the community college and the universities. They're going to give you the Pell Grants, that's self-help, Pell Grants, Cal Grant. Cal Grant is determined by the California Student Aid Commission. Simply, there's not enough, but there is Cal Grants, which are A, B, C. Typically, Cal Grants B and C are at the community colleges, and Cal Grant A is at the universities. The four-year schools are privates, okay? And then the University of California, they have, and other private schools, they have the blue and gold plans or middle-class scholarships. Institutional grants is both for, that one right here, we have in parentheses, is for private colleges. But in California, the University of California and California State Universities, they have what they call university grants, okay? So you can substitute or add the word here, institutional grants. It's for both private colleges and public colleges and universities, okay? Then they're also, more than likely in your award letters, the universities are gonna give you work study. There's a question in the FAFSA that says, would you like to apply for work study or federal work study? You always wanna say yes to that. because that means you can get a job on campus, and then you don't have to go, you don't have to go out of campus to work. You can work on campus and get experience. I can tell you, at the college, I have 2 staff members that started as federal work study employees in financial aid, and now they're financial aid professionals. Okay, so that's a good way to get started for some job skills. Okay, and then the last one is the student loans and or parent loans. We call family loans, parent plus loans. Okay, so those are some of the grants that we can potentially get.
By the way, Francisco, for work study, that income, they don't have to, it's not considered like income that they have to report for the following year, right?
Yeah, so the way they do it is, because right now we're in prior year. So essentially we have to, the federal work study, we're looking at 2019 taxes when we're doing the 21, 22. So that income won't really count until essentially 23, 24. When we're 2 years down the road. You have to report it on your taxes, but there's a question on the FAFSA, and we'll go over it, that says out of the income for the student, how much of it was it federal work study? And a lot of the times it's most of it. If students are getting federal work study, and then that equation is that income is automatically subtracted from the student's EFC, the household EFC. Okay. Some of the things that are required to qualify for a Pell Grant. Remember, Pell Grant is federal aid. Okay. We have in California, we have both California aid and federal aid. So there's both. But for federal aid purposes, they have to be either a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen or permanent resident. And then there is some asylum seekers or visa types that that they can be eligible for. They're very specific. I don't have them here with me. I wish I had brought them with me, but they're very specific visas that the students can qualify for. Okay, they have to have a valid social security number. Males between the ages of 18 to 25 have to register with the Selective Service, and you see the link right there is SSS.gov. Or you can select on the FAFSA where it says, would you like the FAFSA to register you for the Selective Service? And you always click register me, and the FAFSA will do it automatically for you. Okay. In 15 years in financial aid, I've only seen one student that was not able to give financial aid because when they were between the ages of 18 to 25, he flat out said he did not want to register with the Selective Service, that he wasn't going to join the military or be drafted. So by law, we have to deny financial aid to that student, okay, to the male student, okay? So that it's just one, in 15 years, I've only seen one. But it has happened, just personal experience, it has happened, and we have to deny the student, okay? This is where the students, your son or your daughters, have work to do. They got to get the high school diploma or get their GED. No ifs or buts about it, okay? That has to happen, okay? And if they don't have the high school diploma or the GED, they can get certificate of proficiency, but they're not going to qualify for federal aid. Okay. So we're going to tell them when they come to the universities or when they come to the community colleges, if they want financial aid, they got to get their GED. Okay. And then they have to have the expected family contribution in order to get Pell Grant of $5,711. Otherwise, more than likely, you're going to go to the middle class scholarship, the blue and gold scholarship, or loans. Okay, so those are that's very limited. If students' expected family contribution is higher than that, more than likely they're not going to qualify for Pell Grant. Specifically, I'm only talking about Pell Grant. Okay, they qualify for a bunch of other stuff, but not Pell Grant specifically. Okay, so just that, I want you guys to understand that distinction. Okay. Okay. These are some of the loan options right here. If students want to take out a loan, we always encourage them to take up the subsidized loan, okay? The first one, the subsidized loan. The reason being is because the government pays the interest while the student is going to school, okay? So that's a plus, that's an advantage. That's how I got my credit started, right? The government was paying the interest while I was going to school for 5 years, right? So I didn't have to pay any interest. And then once you graduate, they typically give you a 6-month grace period. But I was lucky enough where I graduated on a Saturday, and the following Monday I was working full time. So I was right away, I started making payments, right? So I got 6 months a head start. The government was still paying the interest, so I paid extra money to the principal. So took advantage of the subsidized loans. Then you have the unsubsidized loans, and you'll see the amounts here as well, but you have the unsubsidized loans. If you're a dependent student, and this is parents where it's going to be key for financial aid purposes only. Okay, just remember, for financial aid, the student is dependent on parents' income until either they're 24, they're married, or they have children of their own. Okay, so it's very important. Until they're not 24, they're not married, and they don't have children of their own, or they don't have a bachelor's degree yet, you have to provide your tax information on the FAFSA. And the most common question I get from parents is they'll call me and say, hey, can you tell me what's going on with my son or my daughter's financial aid file? I'm sorry, I can't give you any information. I understand, but they have my tax information on the FAFSA. Yeah, that's to determine the expected family contribution and how we're going to cover the student's financial need. Okay, there's also, there's also the Parent Plus loans. Okay, so some of parents are gonna be very nice and borrow money for your sons or your daughters. They give you an interest rate of 5.3. You start making payments 60 days after the first disbursement. So if they get the first disbursement on August 1st, then you're gonna look at roughly October 1st where you start making payments on that. There's also alternative loans. You would wanna check with the financial aid office at the school that your son or your daughter is going to. Okay, if they certify those loans, because they have to be certified. And some, I can honestly tell you the community colleges rarely do those, but because we offer simply the other three, which are much more favorable terms for students than the alternative loans. Okay. Okay, next one, please. Okay, for Cal grants, you have to graduate from California high school. There's both competitive and entitlement grants. The California Student Aid Commission has some income guidelines, very stringent, and a lot of times students don't qualify, or a lot of times students are disqualified the following year because they don't meet the income guidelines. They do require you to complete the FAFSA, or for those, as Marcela alluded to, AB 540 students, do the DREAM Act application. I can honestly tell you, if you miss the March 2nd deadline to apply, and the deadline's right there, parents will take note of that date. If they don't apply by that date and they get the Cal grant, chances are their Cal grant is going to be rejected. They're going to be denied because they didn't meet the March 2nd deadline. And notice that they're giving you 6 months, right? So October 1st to March 2nd, they're giving you 6 months and a day. Okay, so that's more than half a year they're giving you. So you got to make sure you tell the students, your son or your daughters, to get that done right away. Okay, the California Student Aid Commission will notify students via email. Okay, notice in capital letters there, students, read your emails. Okay, the emails are not going to go to your mom and your dad. They're not going to go there. They're going to go to you, the student. And if you don't read the emails and if you don't ask questions, I can honestly tell you, middle of September, this past September, 2 weeks ago, I had a student that called me to the office and said, hey, I received an email from the CSAC, from the commission, last year that I was getting a Cal grant. Okay, so he received the email back in January, February, that he was getting Cal grant. He didn't do anything until September 15 of this year. By the time, so I told him we closed the year. The year was done June 30th. So he could have qualified for almost $7,000 from the state. And because he didn't do anything until September, we had already closed the year. He lost that year. He lost $7,000 in free money. Okay, and I'm talking free money. So if nobody wants if somebody has $7,000 laying around and don't want them, I'll be happy to take them. You can find me at NPC. I'll be happy to take $7,000 for free. Okay, so just so students, please read your emails and respond to us. Okay, email us, call us, or call your financial aid offices, please.
That's so important. I have to say, Francisco, that's so important, not only for financial aid, but also on the admission side. So I've had also students that they work with me, and I think like in April, they're like, I haven't heard from a school. And I'm like, why didn't you reach out to me? I would have helped you, or I did help them, but they don't check their email. So we could drive that home. If there's one thing that you should take home today, is to read your emails. It's like you have no other options if you want, one, to get admitted, and then two, to receive financial aid.
Absolutely. Here are some of the things that we're going to need to get started filling out the FAFSAs. We're going to need the W2s for the parents for 2019. And then if you already have, by now, you should already have your 2019 taxes completed. So we need the federal taxes, please. We're gonna need those handy. And then again, we've already talked about this, the colleges that they're interested in. Again, we don't have to go overboard. Making a college selection with 10 schools, you can't go around going to go get an education, right? So 10 colleges would be, it's enough on the application, but again, the students can then submit it and then wait a week or two and then add the other 5 or 10 that they wanna, that they might be interested in. But typically, I tell students, if you got more than 10, it's gonna be a tough choice. You can get into 5 or 6, and then you're gonna even have a harder time. If you get into 20 of them, man, I can't imagine that one. So, you know, just make sure you have at least 10 schools. That would be good number to send that to.
So as we just wrap up the information or the pieces of the puzzle, what we recommend is to, even though we don't know the true cost of attendance, don't let the price tag influence your decision of applying. Be strategic. You could talk to your counselors and identify what are schools that usually give out financial aid, what are schools that may have more opportunities for me. And if you're really interested in a school, apply. And then once you get the decision, you will get the financial award letter after that moment. Make sure to fill out the forms as a team. And I say, yes, it's possible, because I have worked with hundreds of students now, and it's easier. So if you could work with your parents, or parents, if you could work with your child, this is the time to come together, because the form needs to be submitted by both the student and the parent. There is this tool that is called Net Price Calculator. The Net Price Calculator allows you to get some sort of estimate from a school. It's a government mandate, and so all of the universities have this net price calculator. The schools that are more transparent, they'll have it on their landing page. The schools that are not transparent, they will have you click 1,000 or click 1,000 clicks to get to the net price calculator. But luckily, because we have Google, you could just type in net price calculator and the name of the school. Be careful, because these are just estimates, right? You could use the forecaster as well. There's another opportunity for you to get an estimate of what would be your EFC. But if you have the time, and if you're a junior, this could be a good exercise that you could choose, possibly like a CSU, a UC, and maybe a few additional schools, private, out of state universities, just to get an idea. But just know that these are options. Do your research. Colleges are, I call it, in their own respective orbit, meaning that they all have their deadlines, they all have their different forms that you have to fill out. I didn't mention that for early decision and early action, or early action single choice, the financial aid deadlines are usually in November. So if you miss a deadline, the school could turn around and say, hey, like, we emailed you the information. They are able to track that type of information. We have that on our website. You should have been able to find that on our website. And so they have no mercy. So if you miss a form, you miss a deadline, it's like, too bad. We hear this all the time. This is directly, I think Francisco is probably the nicest financial aid counselor I have ever met. Most counselors are like, they have worked in financial aid for a long time, and so they learned how to like have a wall in front of them that it doesn't, they just stick to the numbers. So make sure you do not your deadline. Make sure you do your research, and know that you're going to hear again the deadline for March 2nd, and just make sure that you cover your bases. There's this process that we could entertain in the spring, which is the appeal process. So the appeal process is available. So let's say your EFC, we're going to go to that scenario that a college costs $1,000 and your EFC is 100. And the school will turn around and possibly they'll say, we are only going, sorry, the EFC is 100, so the need is 900. And let's say the universities say, you know what, we're going to turn around and offer 600. So you still have a gap of $300 that you need to come up with. So at that point, you could write a letter of an appeal letter to the financial aid counselors and say, hey, can you explain the situation? I know that colleges are not giving tuition, full tuition to everybody. It's not like a thing anymore. But if you're in a situation that merits an appeal, go ahead and do it. Even if I would even say, if they tell you do not fill it out, I have seen cases, or not write the email. I have seen cases where students write an appeal, and who knows what's going to happen this year in regards to number of applications, students that enroll, that by the time that they're getting closer to May 1st, and if their enrollments are lower, and if you were one of the first students admitted in that first cohort, they may turn around and offer the financial aid that you need, because they prefer to offer more financial aid in some cases to students instead of going to their wait list. That's reality. Just a piece of information, something that you should have in mind as you go through this process. The financial aid counselors use the term professional judgment. So they will use their own kind of discretion to decide if you will be given more financial aid. And last thing, go ahead.
Let me add a little bit to that professional judgment. Make sure that students, and this is for the students, because if you parents call, they're not going to give you information, period. Okay. If you call them, they're not going to give you information. So your son or your daughter has to use that term specifically. I need to use a professional judgment because my parents' income due to COVID, you know, they're asking you for 2019 taxes. By the time your son or daughter goes to school, it's fall 2021. Okay, that's almost 2 years. Your income is totally different. Okay, so you want to make sure. There's one that we just did not too long ago where both of the parents had a business. Well, with this COVID, you're 6 months, they haven't been able to open. So yeah, they were making, let's say $100,000 prior to COVID, and now they're making $20,000 for a family of 4. It's not, with the expenses and household stuff, you're not going to survive on that, right? So we have, there's documentation that each school is going to ask you for, but you know, keep in mind, so if you lost your job, make sure you keep those letters, you know, those layoff notices. If you receive unemployment, those things are going to be essential so that when you have to go in and do the professional judgment, those, you'll have all your ducks in order. Okay. So just make sure you have that information and use those, you know, it's either professional judgment or income change. Okay. So you want to make sure you use those terms and say, hey, my income in 2019 was way too higher than it was in 2020. And then hopefully they'll make an adjustment like that. You just have to communicate with them at the college financial aid office where they're going to be going to.
I remember that when I first met you, Francisco, I had called you because I was working with a student that the EFC was $40, and I was shocked that the CSUs didn't award any financial aid. And you shared something really important, that if you wait until the last minute, the school may run out of funds, right? Including Cal Grants. Go ahead.
Yeah, Cal Grants, it's the state of California has Cal Grant awards for about 380 to 400,000 students. We have 1 million students graduating from high school every year, roughly, right? Or if not more. I mean, I'll have to defer that question to my high school colleagues and counselors. But if we have we have 1 million high school graduates a year in California, you only have awards for half of them, right? And so, or less than half. So it's very competitive, and then there's an entitlement. So, and they could potentially miss out on state funds, right? Or institutional grants or university grants. So that's why it's important that you complete the FAFSA, get it done in October, get it out of the way, check it off, FAFSA done October, boom, you know that's done. Then come January, if you don't hear anything from the schools in January, then you gotta make sure you call them or you email them and say, hey, what's going on? I've submitted my FAFSA to your office, to your school. I'm interested in coming to this school, but I'd like to see what my award letter is going to be before I make a decision in May. You know, you have a little more leverage there, and that they're more inclined to push, you know, to speed up the process for you, for your file.
Lastly, make sure that you read the fine print and renew financial aid for the following year. Usually if you receive either scholarships, grants, there will be some sort of fine print. Keep a certain GPA, make sure that you fill out the FAFSA the following year, and maybe possibly something different. Just make sure to read the financial award and letter or email notification, and know and ask the questions. Like, ask the questions, is this for 1 year? Is this for 4 years? Like, what is the process at a particular school? Remember, each college is in their own respective orbit. So you focus on kind of looking at what is available, what you need to do. And once you have the financial award letters in front of you, then at that point, you could strategically decide what makes sense, either for enrollment or to decide to appeal. So now we've talked about just kind of the basics of financial aid. We didn't go into the promise grants. That's a different conversation for the community college. But for today, we want to take you through the filling out the FAFSA. I'm sure that everybody's so excited to fill out the FAFSA tonight, right? Let me open up the chat. And before we actually go to filling out the FAFSA, we want to kind of see if you have questions. No questions? Oh, wow.
Yes.
So we did a really good job. Oh.
We have a
Go
question. So is the FAFSA application and the California Dream App application two different financial aid programs?
The FAFSA application is specifically for those students that are U.S. citizens or permanent residents. If students are what we call, in California, we call them Assembly Bill 540, so it's AB 540 students. Those are for students who have graduated from California high school or have completed at least 4 years of elementary education, elementary, middle, and high school, and want to be eligible for some assistance. Okay, so if you're a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, you got to do the FAFSA. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And if you're not, don't fill out the FAFSA. Would you say that, Francisco?
Yeah, you would do the DREAM Act, or we would have a conversation. You would want to talk to the financial aid office at the school that you want to go to see what form you need to fill out. Okay, but typically it's going to be in California. If you're going to stay in California, is a DREAM Act application, the AB 540 DREAM Act. And again, Google is like a library, although you got to be careful with some of those links that come around, but you just type DREAM Act California, and then it should come up. I think it's dream.act.csac.gov. That's the website. I should have put it up there, but we'll cross that bridge.
I think we have it. We have it. I'll go back once we're filling out the form. But with the DREAM Act, that's funding for the UCs and CSUs.
And that's for the state.
That's for the state. Know that independent schools may also have scholarships. Like at Santa Clara, there was full tuition, room and board, books, everything covered for students that were AB 540. They would have between 4 and 6 students receive the scholarship. So check out what colleges may offer financial aid if you're an AB 540 student.
We'll look at the questions and then we'll get going to.
Okay.
So a couple of questions is, what if we already filled out our FAFSA? What's next for us? Congratulations, you're done.
Yeah.
You want to make sure your mom or your dad and you have signed the application. So the next step is going to be where the FAFSA will then send your individual student aid report, or ISAR as we called it, to the schools that you added to your FAFSA. And then hopefully you'll hear from them either December or January. I know at Monterey Peninsula College, we pride ourselves in making sure that when students apply, that hopefully in January, the earliest in January, they'll at least see an estimated award letter in their financial aid portal, so that then they can see, okay, if I'm coming to school full time, this is kind of what I'll be expecting to receive. And I know the four-year schools do a lot better job than the community colleges in doing that. So in terms of letting students know where they are with their financial aid. There's also other questions that have come up here. Is how I have income. of my legal guardian and financially, it would be, if the question on the FAFSA, that's going to be on the dependency questions. I believe that's step 3. If the answer to one of those questions is yes, or in legal guardianship, then it's not going to require parent information, but you would have to probably provide documentation that you're in a legal guardianship with the financial aid office of the school that you're going to be going to. Okay. Another question, it says here, did you say both parent and student have to fill out the FAFSA? It's one application, it's for the student, but it has a section for the student and then a section for the parents. Okay, so both of them essentially have to go in and fill out the information. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Question here, for parents who are divorced, then you only need for the parent that provides, you only need the parent that provides 51% of the support for the child or for the son or your daughter. Okay, so it has to be whomever provides 51% of the support.
So before we jump into the next meeting, so if you are applying to the schools that will require the CSS profile, guess what? They will ask for additional information. They may ask for, if you're divorced, they will ask for the additional income. So it's slightly different. Just know that the schools that require the FAFSA only, then it's 51%. And for the ones that are CSS, it's literally everybody that's in the family. You're so happy, Francisco.
No, I just have my little ones. They just came in from a walk, and then my oldest one is like, Dad, you're in a very important meeting. We shouldn't be in here.
It's okay. Okay, so how about if they have no income?
Then you would put zeros.
And if they have like, what is it called, like government assistance, would they put zeros as well?
That's no income. The questions on the FAFSA, well, when we go through them, you'll see they're asking you about income from work. And then if there's unemployment or untaxed income, then you put whatever you received on the question. And there's plenty of questions. We'll go through them as we're filling them out. And typically that's going to be like in questions 44, question 44 or question 90, I think it's 91 or 92. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we'll get through some of those. We'll answer those questions then.
Okay, I got a private message. Which one should we expect to receive first? The school acceptance or FAFSA? Admission letter. That's, I mean, the school, even if you go and say, what type of financial aid will I expect to receive? One, they'll say, go to the net price calculator, or they'll say, we will notify you after you've been admitted. These are good questions, by the way.
Yeah. And again, every school depends. Like, you know, some community colleges, like I know for the one that I want to work at, we don't open the application period for the following fall until the spring semester. So we will have the students' FAFSA in our system and beginning essentially tomorrow, because we're going to be downloading tomorrow. We're going to be downloading FAFSAs tomorrow for everybody that applied between October 1st and today. We'll probably get them tomorrow. So we'll have, 3 or 4 months time. We'll have FAFSAs in our system. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to make sure that by December, a lot of these students already will have essentially an estimated award letter, because it can't be an official award letter until you actually enroll at the college or the university. Right, so it'll be an estimated award letter. That's what it'll be, an estimated award letter until you actually decide which school you're going to go to. And another question that came in says, so are we applying for 21-22? Yes, that's the FAFSA application that we will be working with. 21-22. So that's the one that we're going to be working with.